in my last year, senior year, and went into the service.
He served 6 years in the military, 2 as a Marine, 4 in the Navy as a cardiopulmonary technician. That's where our paths crossed for the only time. That's Jeremiah Wright behind the IV pole, monitoring President Lyndon Johnson's heart as he was recovering from gallbladder surgery at Bethesda Naval Hospital. And right behind him is a very young me. I was the president's press secretary.
As you know, the president had to be operated on and out of surgery by 9 o'clock when the stock market opened, and talking and wide awake. So we scrubbed in at like 3 in the morning. When he awakened, unlike other patients, you did not move him to recovery. You didn't move him to ICU. You kept him right there for security reasons. Secret Service all around the room, Secret Service in the whole operating suite. Nobody else allowed in the operating suite except Secret Service. So after about an hour and a half, I went to get some coffee. And as I was coming back from the lounge where the coffee was, going back to monitor, I saw the guys talking into their wristwatches, and I was nodding and speaking to them. So I turned to go into the room to check the pace, and the Secret Service guy standing there grabbed me, knocked the coffee out of my hand, burned me with the hot coffee, twisted my arm up behind my neck and screams into his phone, "I got him!" And I'm screaming, "Got him!" And I'm screaming in pain, and my assistant comes running out of the booth. He sees me jacked up and he starts laughing. I said, "Joe, don't laugh, tell him who I am." And he said, "He's been here all morning."
Standing above the president.
The guy looked at me, he pulled my mask up on my face, "Oh yeah." And that was it.
After the military, Wright graduated from Howard University, then went to the University of Chicago Divinity School for a master's in religious history. But his path took a turn back to his first calling when he was asked by that struggling little church on the south side of Chicago to become its pastor. So when you looked out on that handful of worshipers that first Sunday morning, 87 members, I'm sure all of them weren't there.
Oh yeah, they were. They heard this new kid was there with a big natural, so they came to see.
They were there.
Yes.
So what did you see and what did you think you had to do?
Well, actually, a good friend of yours, I believe, and one of my professors, got me in the predicament I'm in today. Dr. Martin Marty, one of my professors at the University of Chicago.
One of the great distinguished historians of religion in America.
He put a challenge to us in 1970, late 69, early 70, I'll never forget. He said, "You know, you come into the average church on a Sunday morning and you think you've stepped from the real world into a fantasy world." And what do I mean by that? He said, pick up a church bulletin. You leave a world, Vietnam, or today, you leave a world, Iraq, over 4,000 dead American boys and girls, over 100,000, 200,000, depending on which count, Iraqi dead, Afghanistan, Darfur, rapes in the Congo, Katrina, the lower Ninth Ward. That's the world you leave, and you come in and you pick up your church bulletin, and it says there's a ladies' tea on second Sunday. The children's choir will be doing. He says, how come our bulletins and how come the faith preached in our churches does not relate to the world in which our church members leave at the benediction? Well, it hit me in several different ways. Number one, not only the church publication, the bulletin, the weekly bulletin, but what about the ministry? And what about the prophetic voice of the church that's not heard? We're talking about things that our members are wrestling with, a whole bunch of other things. And the sermons and the ministries of the church don't touch those things. So when I looked and said, this church had said to me, in fact, not just to me, the church, the congregation had said, okay, we were started by a white denomination. We were started in this community to be an integrated church. 10 years that hasn't happened. Are we going to be a black church in this community? What are we doing for this community? They put together a statement and showed it to all the candidates for the pulpit. I was one of the candidates. They said, can you lead us in this new direction? How do we minister to this community in which we sit? Not just on Sunday. First, you have to attract people to come or even be interested in our worship experiences on Sunday, but what do we do in ministry that speaks to the community and the world in which we sit? That's Martin Marty. That's Martin Marty.
Marty told me that you launched a strenuous effort to help the members of that church overcome the shame, and I'm quoting him, they had so long been conditioned to experience. What was the source of that shame?
What Carter G. Woodson calls the miseducation of the Negro, that Africa is ignorant. Africans are ignorant. There's no African history. There's no African music. There's no African culture. Anything related to Africa is negative. Therefore, you are not African. Chinese come to the country. They're still Chinese American. We have Chinatown. Koreans come. They're still Koreans. We have Koreatown. Africans come. They're colored. They're Negro. They're anything but Africa. In fact, we don't even call them Ibu, Ibibiu, Fulani, Fanti, Ga. No. They're all Negro. Portuguese, Negro, Spanish, they all get lumped into black. No, we're not black, we're Negro, with the capital N. The shame of being a descendant of Africa was a shame that had been pumped into the minds and hearts of Africans from the 1600s on, even aided and abetted by the benefit of those schools started by the missionaries, who simply carried their culture with them into the South and taught their culture as being synonymous with Christianity. So that to become a Christian, you had to let go of all vestiges of Africa and become European, become New Englanders. And worship like New Englanders, worship God properly and right. Well, that shame was a part of the shame that many Africans in the 60s and 70s were feeling. Dr. Reuben Shears, my predecessor, he was the interim pastor at Trinity, coined the phrase, unashamedly black. Where blacks coming out of the 60s were no longer ashamed of being black people, nor did they have to apologize for being Christians, because many persons in the African American community were teasing us Christians of being the white man's religion. And no, we're not ashamed of Christianity, and we don't have to apologize for who we are as African Americans. So it's that I think was what Marty was talking about.
So when Trinity Church says it is unashamedly black and unapologetically Christian, is it embracing a race-based theology?
No, it is not. It is embracing Christianity without giving up Africanity. A lot of our missionaries were going to other countries assuming that our culture is superior, that you have no culture, and to be a Christian you must be like us. Right now you can go to Ghana, Nigeria, Senegal to see Christians in 140-degree weather. They have to have on a tie because that's what it means to be a Christian. Well, it's that kind of assuming that our culture, we have the only sacred music. You must sing our music. You must use a pipe organ. You cannot use your instruments. It's that kind of assumption that in the field of missions, people say, you know what? We're doing this wrong. We need to take Christ and leave culture at home. We need to learn the cultures of the people into which we're moving and preach the message of Jesus Christ using the culture that we are a part of. Well, the same thing happened with Christians in this country when they said, you know what? Because those same missionaries who went south, they didn't let us sing gospel music. That was not sacred music.
Sing the great Anglican hymns.
Correct. And make sure you use correct diction. Well, the African Americans in the late 60s started saying, you know, no. Even I was at Virginia Union. I was a soloist at Virginia Union in the
college in Richmond.
Right, in the concert choir. We were not allowed to sing anything but anthems and spirituals. The same thing with the Howard University Concert Choir. The same thing with all the historically black colleges until '68. When King got killed, black kids started saying, wait a minute, we're not giving up who we are as black people to show somebody else that we, in fact, the music majors at Howard, when I was a teaching assistant on Lavelle, they said to the choir director there, we're tired of singing German Lieder and Italian aria to prove to you that we can sing foreign songs, but we have our own music tradition. Prior to '68, there was no gospel music at Howard University. Prior to '68, there was no jazz major. The white universities are giving Count Basie and Duke Ellington degrees. We don't even have a jazz course. We don't have blues. We don't have any of our music on this black college campus because the missionaries had not allowed us to teach our own music. And at that point in history, all across the country and all across denominational lines, the college-age kids started saying no more, no mas, nada mas. We're going to do our people, we're going to do our culture, we're going to do our history, and we're going to embrace it and not to say one is superior to the other, because we are different. And different does not mean deficient. We're just different, like snowflakes. We're different. We talk about God of diversity. God has diverse culture, God has diverse, and we're proud of who we are. That's the statement the congregation was making, not a race-based theology.
So God is not, contrary to some of the rumors that have been circulated about Trinity, God is not exclusively or totally identified with just the black community.
Of course not. God, I think Jesus said to Nicodemus, God so loved the world, not just the black community, that we have, our church is what some we call multicultural. We not only have Hispanic members, we not only have members.
You said no mas. I started saying that's not a spiritual. That's not out of the spirituals or the blues.
Yeah. We have members from Cuba. We have members from Puerto Rico. We have members from Belize. We have members from all of the Caribbean islands. We have members from South Africa, from West Africa, and we have white members.
So what does the church service on Sunday morning mean in general to the black community?
It means many things. I think one of the things the church service means is hope. That tell me that there is hope in this life, almost like Psalm 27, where David said, "I would have fainted unless I had lived to see the goodness of the land in this life."